Hi there! Welcome to our introductory Python programming course for beginners. You can find a link to the course playlist down in the description box. In this video, we're going to learn how to work in JupyterLab, and at the same time, we'll learn how to work with Python as a calculator to do basic calculations. So Python can do more than just basic calculations, but this should be a good start. So let's begin. Currently, I am in JupyterLab, specifically in the notebook that we created in the previous video. I just moved it to a clean folder. So let's start from the top. We've got a menu bar here with different menu options like File, Edit, etc. And then under that, we've got a left sidebar, and we've seen this in the previous video as well. And to the right, we've got our notebook, which occupies the bulk of the window, and also it's going to be our main focus for today. So that being said, we're going to give our notebook a little more room by hiding the left navigation bar. To do that, we're going to navigate to the top left section and click on that folder icon. There we go, we've got more room. So looking at our notebook, at the top, we've got the notebook name, and we learned in the previous video how to rename this. Under the notebook name or notebook title, you've got the taskbar with different icons that do different things. So we're going to learn what most of these do in this video. And notice that we've already seen what this icon does. That's saving the notebook. And also notice that when I hover over it, it tells us what it does here. So we've got a short description that says save and create checkpoint, and then in brackets it says Control S. So Control S is the keyboard shortcut for saving the notebooks. I love keyboard shortcuts. They make things faster, but for the sake of the video, I'm just going to click on icons today. Below the taskbar, we have this input area. I'm just going to click on it so we all see exactly what I'm talking about. There we go. Now it's highlighted, and it has some icons to the right as well that do different things. So I want you to recall from the previous video when I mentioned that notebooks display results directly under each section you run. So this is the section I was referring to, and it is called a cell in Jupyter. So the different types of cells, and you can see what type the cell you're in is by going up to the taskbar right here in the middle. So it says code here. And if you want to see different types, we're going to click on this drop down here. You see that we've got code, markdown, and raw. So code is self-explanatory. That's where you're going to write your code. But with markdown, it's for notes or documentation. So markdown is actually an example of a computer language called markup language. It uses symbols to tell a computer how to format text. Another example of a markup language is HTML. And in fact, you can write in HTML inside this markdown cell, and it works as well. As for raw, you can ignore that for now. We're not going to use it. The first two are the most important ones. So let us change our cell to markdown. I'm just going to click this markdown, and now it's markdown. What we're going to do is to add a title. To do this, we need the symbol hash, and then we need a space, and then we can type our title. So I'm just going to write Python as a calculator. Okay, so right now it doesn't look pretty. It's not formatted yet. To format it, you need to tell the computer, okay, I'm done typing. Now you can execute this formatting. We do this by clicking this play button on the toolbar to run the cell. So let's do that. Here we go. Now it looks formatted. Perfect. So you can do a lot more with Markdown. You can have bullet points, tables, check marks, links, or even images in there. But if we get into that, this video is going to be very long. So we'll just leave it at that. Also, notice that when I ran the cell, it gave us another cell underneath, which is great. Now we have somewhere else to write. But if you needed to add more cells, there are a couple of ways to do this. So within the cell itself, you have these two here. The first one, you can insert a cell above it, just click that, or the second one, you can insert a cell below, like that. And you can also add cells from the taskbar using this plus sign. I'll just press that so we can add a couple more cells. There we go. That's how you add extra cells. So now we have a title, Python is a calculator. So let's actually use Python as a calculator. For the basic calculations, Python syntax is pretty much the same as most calculators. I'm just going to paste a table here that I already made so we can see these operators. So we've got the operator and the operation. For example, addition, that's a plus sign, subtraction, that's a minus sign, and that is like every other calculator. Then for multiplication, we've got an asterisk, division, we've got forward slash, exponentiation or powers, we've got double asterisk, and modulus or the remainder function, we've got the percentage sign, and then floor, we've got the double forward slash. So let's see this in action, but this is taking up all the room here. I could scroll down, but I'm just going to delete it. We don't need to look at it right now. To do so, you can do this within the cell by clicking this bin over here. Just click that. Another way that you could delete this is by going up to the toolbar and clicking on this scissors. So this is going to cut the cell, and you can paste it again if you need to with this clipboard icon there. Right, we're ready. So let's start with addition. I'm just going to do it something simple. 1 plus 1. There we go. And as with the markdown one, we're going to need to run it for it to execute what we've written there. So let's click run. There we go. 1 plus 1 equal 2. Perfect. So just for readability with this, I prefer to add some spaces between the operators and the numbers. And you notice that it turned orange or red, whatever color this is. It's just warning you that you made some changes and you haven't run this cell. There's also a number in here, 1. So this is the order of execution. So it's telling you this was the first cell that was run. And if we run it again, it should turn into a 2 because that's the second time we're running it. So let's do that. Let's run it again. Great, it's a 2 as expected. The next thing we'll look at is subtraction. I just want to do something simple, 1 minus 1. So instead of typing it again, I'm just going to copy this cell. To do so, we have two options. We can click on this icon here, this double page with the plus sign. That's going to copy it down, so you can see here, or you can actually go up to the taskbar and click on this double page icon to copy the cell, and then once you've copied it, you use the clipboard icon to paste it. But we've already done that, so we don't need to see that piece. There we go. Going back to our cell, I'm just gonna put this as a minus, and we're going to run that. That should be a 0. Perfect. And it's the third one we've executed, so it's number 3 as well. And let's look at multiplication with 1 times 1 is boring, so we'll do 1 times 2 and run that. And then with division, we'll do 1 divided by 2, should be 0.5. Perfect. And then the more complex one, there's the modulus or modulus one or the remainder one. So let's do 13 modulo 5. And the remainder, there's 3, so that should give us 3. Perfect. And then for the floor, it's going to give you how many times a number fully divides into another number. So 13 floor 5 should be 2. Great. Perfect. So that's how you do calculations in Jupyter. Another thing I want to look at here, which you also see in calculators, is syntax errors. Let's add a title for this section. So let's change this cell to Markdown, and then we're going to make that title smaller than the first one that we wrote. To do this, we'll add 2 hash, and then a space again, and syntax. Here we go. Run that. Perfect. So if you've watched our What is Programming video, you should already know what syntax is. But just a refresher, syntax are the rules that dictate the correct way to write code. If you use incorrect syntax, you get a syntax error. And we use the example of 1 plus in our What is Programming video, but here I'm going to write 1 minus. Okay, let's run that and see what that looks like. Oh, we got an error. No, just kidding. We knew that was going to happen. We just didn't know what it was going to look like. So Python does a good job of telling you what kind of error that you've got. So here it says syntax error, invalid syntax. It also tries to show you where it believes the syntax error happens. This is pretty accurate here. It's not always that accurate though when you get into like more complex code, but it's pretty helpful. It just does its best. So that's great. Another syntax error you could get here is from typing 1 and space and just 1 on that. Yeah, it's another syntax error again. So just be mindful. This is something that you can encounter and you just have to fix the syntax here. Another error that we talked about is semantic error. This is when you give the computer incorrect code for the task that you wanted to do. This will not give you an error message, but it will just produce an incorrect result. So an example of where you could have a semantic error at this point is by forgetting the order of operations. So that will be our next topic. Let's just going to scroll up a little bit and add another title, Markdown. I'm going to make it same size as the syntax one, type order of operations. So there's no spell check in Markdown. Just forgive me if there's any spelling mistakes here. We'll run that. Right. And I'm going to actually go back into this Markdown that we just ran by double clicking it, which will take us back to edit mode. I'm going to paste something I've got here and run it again. Python has the same order of operations as we learned in school. I learned BODMAS or BOMDAS. Some people learned PEMDAS, I believe, or something along those lines. But basically, it's that brackets reign supreme, and then we've got orders, which are exponents and powers, and then division, multiplication, and then addition and subtraction. So I said division and multiplication together because they do have the same priority. So if you've got only division and multiplication there, then you go from the left to the right. And same with addition and subtraction, you just go from the left to the right. So let's look at an example here. Let's say we have 1 plus 1 times, I should move my mouse here, times 2. Let's try that. So if we were going from the left to the right, it would be 1 plus 1, which is 2, and then times 2, which should give us 4. But that's not what we're going to get because order of operations apply. So let's run that and see what we're going to get. Yeah, we've got 3 instead of 4. So what's happening here is that multiplication happens before addition. So we'll have 1 times 2 first, which will give us 2, and then add that to 1, which will give us 3. So I'm not going to go through any more examples of this. I did want to show you how you could get a semantic error at this point. So let's say you were expecting to get a 4, and you get a 3, then that's a semantic error. One way you could fix this is by adding brackets, for example, here around the 1 plus 1 to make sure that that happens first, and that should now give us a 4. Perfect. So with semantic errors, again, because you do not actually get an error message, it's good to check your code to see that that's what you were expecting. And you can fix it if it's not what you were expecting. Perfect. That's how you use Python as a calculator. I believe we've covered most of that there. But what we have not done is see what all of the icons do here. So I'm going to go through those quickly. Let's start with the ones within the cell. So we haven't covered these arrows here. So the first one, it moves the cell up, and the second one, it moves it down. So let's see that happening. So it moves it up. That's where the cell is now. We can move it up again. Here it is. And we can click it again and move it down. Click it again, move it back down. And now it's back to where it was. I believe that covers all of the icons in here. And going back to the taskbar, we've got this icon here to interrupt the kernel. So when you're running your notebook, the kernel will be on, and that's what's keeping track of the running and facilitating your execution. So you can interrupt it. For example, let's say when we start doing more complex things, it may be taking a long time to run something and you think, oh, maybe there's an error. So you can stop it by interrupting it there. Or if you notice that, oh, right, I need to change something and this is going to take a long time and I don't want to wait, you can interrupt the kernel, change it, and then run it again. So interrupting the kernel doesn't always work. Sometimes it's just like stubborn and it doesn't want to end the process. So what you could do is use the next one, which is restarting the kernel. So restarting the kernel is not ideal because it's going to erase everything that you have done. Right now, it doesn't really matter because we're not storing things, but in the future, we're going to start storing things and then using them. So it matters then. Just be mindful that when you restart the kernel, it pretty much restarts execution and your numbers will start again from 1. But sometimes it's necessary when your process just doesn't want to stop, and this is the only way that you can do that. The next one, though, is restart kernel and also run all the cells. So like I said, restarting the kernel clears everything out. So you essentially probably want to run your cells again. So this is the button that you can use for that. It will restart it and then it will run all the cells in the order that they're in over here. Perfect. So that covers all of the ones on the taskbar. Well, let's move on to the left sidebar. I'll click the folder icon to unhide it again. And the first button you've got here will launch a new launcher. I can click that and we can see it over here. And let's get back to our notebook. The next icon is to create a new folder under here. The next one is to upload files, and the last one is to refresh the file browser just in case you added some files outside of JupyterLab and you need to see them here. You can also search for files here by name, which is perfect, and the rest we've seen in previous video. That's your file directory and what's in it. And under the folder icon here, we're going to click the terminal button. And the first thing you've got here is showing you what tabs are open. So we've got our notebook and then we've got the launcher. And you can close them from here. So I'm just going to close the launcher. We can close our notebook as well, but I don't want to do that right now. And then underneath, it will show you all the kernels that are currently running. So in the previous video, I showed you how to shut down JupyterLab properly. But actually, the first thing you need to do is to shut down your kernels if you have anything running, and then shut down JupyterLab. So we can do this by clicking the X here. Or if you had many of them and you were done with JupyterLab, you can just shut all of them down by clicking Shut Down All. So when we click that, I'm just going to click the X here to shut it down. It's going to disappear from here and it will tell you no kernels are currently running. The next one is the table of contents. So those markdown that we wrote, they will show in here. And you can click them to go to the section that it pertains to. So let's click Python as a calculator. It's going to take us to Python as a calculator. Syntax, take us to syntax, and then back to order of operations. So this is pretty handy. The last one is extensions, and we don't have any, so we don't need to worry about that or look at it. The last thing is the menu items here. So the first one, file, let's just click on that to see the options. So we've seen one of the options down here to shut down Jupyter, but in general, it's everything that has to do with the file or JupyterLab itself. So you can create a new launcher, close tabs, close all tabs, save a notebook, etc., or download them too. And then the next one is edit. That has to do with the notebook. So most of these, or a lot of these operations are already within the notebook in the taskbar. For example, cutting cells, copying, deleting, like this whole section here. But what we don't have is undoing cell operations and redoing cell operations. And you have the keyboard shortcuts for these two. So you can take a look and see what those are. Within View, you can control what you see in here. For example, you can show or hide the left navigation bar from here as well, and different other options. And then Run, you get more options for running the cell. For example, you can run all of them above the selected cell, or you can run the selected cell and everything below that. Then kernel gives you more options for the kernel as well. We've seen interrupt kernel, restart kernel, but there are a couple more like restart kernel and run up to the cell that you have selected, or you can reconnect to the kernel or shut down the kernel from here. In fact, you don't have to always go to the left bar. The biggest thing in tabs is that you can see a list of all the open notebooks or any other documents that you have open. Then you can see all the different settings for Jupyter Lab. And the last one gives you help links. For example, you can learn more about Jupyter Lab, or you can get a Jupyter reference or Jupyter Lab reference. Let's click on that and actually see it appear. And we've come to the end of our video. Just some quick takeaways. Python works like most calculators, and Jupyter Lab has lots of options and features, but you don't have to memorize most of them, for example, the icons, because if you hover over them, you get a short description of what they do, and you also get some keyboard shortcuts. In the next video, we're going to learn about variables, which are a way to store values and other objects. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.